We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence says the South China Sea does not belong to any one nation.
The Sandiganbayan on Friday allowed former First Lady and now Ilocos Norte 2nd District Representative Imelda Marcos to post a 150,000 peso bail.
The number of missing in California fire jumps past 600.
And parts of U.S. East Coast experience first snowfall of the season.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence said the South China Sea does not belong to any one nation. Mr. Pence also pledged to defend freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, where Beijing has built military outposts to defend its claim to roughly 80% of the water body.
The South China Sea doesn't belong to any one nation, and you can be confident, Mr. Prime Minister, the United States will continue to sail and fly wherever international law allows, and our national interests are advanced.
Speaking alongside Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong after finalizing a tax agreement Friday, Vice President Mike Pence underscored the strategic tension with a few thinly veiled jabs at China. Vice President Pence reiterating talking points he has used during his attendance at ASEAN events this week said, quote, empire and aggression had no place in the region, which America and its allies have begun calling the Indo-Pacific to emphasize India's role.
Our partnership also includes our pressure campaign regarding North Korea, our collaboration to rid the region of terrorism, our commitment to uphold the freedom of the seas and skies, where we stand shoulder to shoulder with you for freedom of navigation. Our message is simple. The United States commitment to the Indo-Pacific is steadfast and enduring. In all that we do, the United States seeks collaboration, not control. And we are proud to call ASEAN our strategic partner.
The Sandiganbayan on Friday allowed former First Lady and now Ilocos Norte 2nd District Representative Imelda Marcos to post a 150,000 peso bail bond for each count of the 7 counts of her graft conviction for a total of 1.05 million. In its decision, Sandiganbayan 5th Division Chairman Associate Justice Rafael Lagos allowed Marcos to be temporarily released while her motion seeking to appeal the guilty verdict is being heard. Last Friday, the Sandiganbayan convicted the Marcos matriarch of 7 counts of graft for using her official government positions to create and maintain Swiss foundations and bank accounts during the Marcos regime. She was sentenced to a minimum of 6 years and 1 month to a maximum prison sentence of 11 years for each count of graft. She is also perpetually disqualified from holding public office. Marcos told the anti-graft court that she had no idea that the promulgation of the sentence was Friday last week. She informed the Sandiganbayan that her housemaid received the notice of promulgation and put it in the office of her secretary, who was then on leave. At that day, she was also feeling sick.
Na binigyan si ma'am ng bail, ayun lang. And ngayon, yung motion namin, anyway, hindi pa wala pang pinag-aaralan pa siguro.
Marcos arrived around 8 a.m. the Sandiganbayan to attend the hearing on her motion to allow her to post bail and file legal remedies on her conviction. She was accompanied by her children, incumbent Ilocos Norte Governor Imee Marcos, former Senator Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., and grandson Borgie Manoto. In her motion, she asked the Sandiganbayan to defer the issuance of a warrant of arrest, as well as the suspension of its implementation if ever the anti-graft issues such an order.
Ma'am, kumusta po pakiramdam niyo?
In other news, 2 senior Khmer Rouge leaders were sentenced to life imprisonment for genocide for their part in the regime's 1975 to 79 reign of terror. A UN-backed war crimes court said Friday in a historic ruling. Nuwon Chea, 92, was Pol Pot's deputy, and Khieu Samphan, 87, was the Cambodian regime's head of state. They were on trial at the UN-backed tribunal on charges of genocide against Cham Muslims and ethnic Vietnamese. The guilty verdict is the first official acknowledgement that what the regime did was in fact genocide as defined under international law. The 2 men already serving life sentences for crimes against humanity have again been sentenced to life. They are 2 of only 3 people ever convicted by the court in Phnom Penh. Forced marriages, rape, the treatment of Buddhists, and atrocities that were carried out in prisons and work sites throughout the country fall under the additional list of charges against the 2 men. The Khmer Rouge were radical Maoists who formed a regime that ruled Cambodia from 1975 to 1979, led by Salot Sar, who was better known as Pol Pot. When he came to power, he and his henchmen quickly set about transforming Cambodia, now renamed Kampuchea, into what they hoped would be an agrarian utopia. The regime were founded by French-educated intellectuals, and they sought to create a self-reliant agrarian society. Cities were emptied and their residents forced to work on rural cooperatives. Whole families died from execution, starvation, disease, and overwork. Anyone thought to be an intellectual of any sort was killed. Often, people were condemned for wearing glasses or knowing a foreign language. Ethnic Vietnamese and Cham Muslims in Cambodia were also targeted. The brutal regime in power from 1975 to 79 claimed the lives of up to 2 million people. Pol Pot was denounced by his former comrades in a show trial in July of 1997 and then sentenced to house arrest in his jungle home. But less than a year later, he was dead, denying the millions of people who were affected by this brutal regime the chance to bring him to justice.
Not one Rohingya refugee crossed back into Myanmar from Bangladesh under a disputed repatriation program, officials said, with Yangon blaming Dhaka for bungling efforts to start returning the stateless minority. Bangladeshi officials waited hours at a border transit point where the first returnees were expected to cross into Myanmar, despite the United Nations warning that displaced Muslims risk fresh persecution if they went back. But not a single Rohingya from the 720,000 estimated to have fled a Myanmar military crackdown in August last year came forward, with hundreds instead staging a demonstration shouting, "We will not go." No one turned up voluntarily. Bangladesh Refugee Commissioner Muhammad Abul Kalam said, adding they were awaiting instructions from the Foreign Ministry as how to proceed. Bangladesh expected 150 refugees to volunteer to return Thursday, with 5 buses waiting to carry them to the border. But they remained empty, and instead about 1,000 Rohingya men, women, and children protested against repatriations, shouting, "We want justice." The UN charities and human rights groups are concerned there is no effective plan in place to independently monitor the Rohingya safety if they return. The Muslim Rohingya are one of the many ethnic minorities in Myanmar. Authorities in predominantly Buddhist Myanmar see them as illegal immigrants, so they are denied citizenship and other rights. There have been widespread allegations of human rights abuses, including arbitrary killing, rape, and burning of land over many years.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has overseen the testing of a newly developed ultra-modern tactical weapon. Pyongyang state media reported Friday it's a move seen by analysts as more of a political message than a serious provocation. It also marked the first official report of a weapons test by North Korea since it began a delicate diplomatic process with Washington over its nuclear and missile program. South Korea's Yonhap news agency, meanwhile, quoting an unidentified government source, said the weapon could be a long-range cannon that the North has been developing for many years. Kim Jong-un visited the test ground of the Academy of Defense Science and supervised a newly developed ultra-modern tactical weapon test, according to the official Korean Central News Agency. It also said the test was successful but did not specify the type of device involved. Pyongyang's suspension of testing for atomic weapons and ballistic missiles has been key to this year's rapid diplomatic developments and North Korea-U.S. negotiations, and has been repeatedly praised by President Trump. Now, Trump and Kim met at a historic summit in Singapore in June, where they signed a vaguely worded document on denuclearization of the peninsula. Hours after the KCNA report, the U.S. State Department said it was confident the process remained on track.
President Trump and Chairman Kim came up with 4 sets, areas of agreement that they intend to work on. We've been hard at work on those 4 areas of agreement. We take Chairman Kim at his word that he will work on this with us. And when the President and Chairman Kim are next able to meet, whenever that does take place, we think probably early in the next year, we expect that those 4 elements of the Singapore summit will be addressed by the 2 leaders.
Fresh from his trip to Singapore, President Duterte has embarked on a working visit to Papua New Guinea to attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, summit in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. This year's APEC summit in the South Pacific island nation carries the theme Harnessing Inclusive Opportunities, Embracing the Digital Future. The summit is expected to focus on enhancing trade among member economies to ensure sustainable growth, job creation, and better quality of life for people in the region. Philippine Ambassador to Papua New Guinea, Bienvenido Tejano, said the President was expected to push for the development of micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises, particularly helping these small entrepreneurs benefit from the opportunities offered by digital trade.
This is an opportunity for our President to join with the 20 other leaders to touch base and also perhaps join other leaders in affirming their commitment in their international base roles regime for trade and investments. And that is, I think, one of the most important purpose also of the President to come. There are a lot of things that are, I think the President will enjoy this because, you know, this the digital technology, which is the theme of this APEC now. And the President is very passionate about the inclusive growth of even the micro, medium, small enterprise. This digital technology will really enhance the access for these small businesses. the way you look at it, the president will really enjoy, and also the economic leaders we have, because this is now a chance for us and the small businesses to be able to link with some businesses outside their, beyond their reach.
The APEC member economies are Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, China, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Peru, the Philippines, Russia, Singapore, Chinese, Taipei, Thailand, United States of the America, and Vietnam. The APEC member economies account for half of global trade and 60% of world GDP.
And staying in APEC, the leader of Papua New Guinea, host of this year's summit, Friday urged respect for international trade rules by countries large and small as spats between the U.S. and China threatened to overshadow the gathering. As leaders from the Asian Pacific nations prepared to fly in to Port Moresby for their annual meeting, Prime Minister Peter ONeill appeared to call his guests to order on damaging trade rows.
As smaller economies, countries like Papua New Guinea place considerable reliance on the international trade, and especially the international trade rules. We suffer when rules are broken or ignored, and we benefit when rules are followed by all countries, large and small.
Washington and Beijing have slapped tit-for-tat tariffs worth billions of dollars of each other's goods, and both sides have threatened to escalate the conflict if needed. China is pushing a trade deal with other Asian powers like Japan and India, a regional comprehensive economic partnership or RCEP or RCEP, after U.S. President Trump pulled out of the rival Trans-Pacific Partnership or TPP. The TPP is still alive even without Washington and will come into effect in December. But RCEP or RCEP, if realized, will be the world's biggest trade deal. Now, Beijing had hoped to have the meat of the deal done by the end of this year, but the timetable has now slipped to 2019. Foreign ministers meeting ahead of the APEC summit failed to agree immediately on a joint statement amid disagreements over language on reforming the World Trade Organization. The U.S. is thought to be pushing for tough language, criticizing the WTO and urging root and branch reform. But it appears to have run into opposition. Now, ONeill seemed to come to the WTO's defense, saying that Papua New Guinea was playing an increasing role like everyone else.
Our country is playing an increasing role, like everyone else, in the international forums such as the WTO. We must continue that. We must continue to benefit from such arrangements. Free trade must be embraced so that we can enhance freedoms for our people, freedoms for greater investment opportunities, opportunities for expanding in businesses and creating greater job options for our people. And have a great day. Thank you very much.
Sporting parrot feathers, possum pelts, and seashell necklaces. Dozens of people from various tribes in Papua New Guinea serenaded China's president on Friday as he opened a new Chinese-funded road in the poor Pacific island nation. Xi Jinping unveiled a plaque marking the new Independence Boulevard outside Papua New Guinea's parliament, a symbolic show of the Asian giant's growing influence in the region. On the first state visit by a Chinese leader, Papua New Guinea rolled out the red carpet welcome with a military guard of honor, beats from wooden drums, and a royal gun salute. Papua New Guinea has already signed up to Beijing's $1 trillion Belt and Road Initiative that seeks to enhance sea and land trade routes between the Middle Kingdom and Eurasia. Xi's state visit comes ahead of a summit of Asia-Pacific leaders this weekend in Port Moresby, a meeting A meeting U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have skipped. Critics say Trump's absence has left the door ajar for China to bolster its regional influence, and Xi has been the star of the show so far.
Meanwhile, analyst Jonathan Pryke of the Australian Lowy Institute says APEC leaders are going to face tough challenges at the upcoming summit in PNG or Papua New Guinea as they try to find common ground on trade when more countries are taking protective measures.
So APEC is ostensibly about greater economic integration between APEC nations, but we're now in a context where many of these nations are taking more, are stepping away from liberalising. They are taking more protection. They're engaging more protectionist policy. So that's one component: is how you handle a trade summit in a context where less countries are interested in liberalised trade. On the other side is the diplomatic angle. One component is the absence of Trump and Putin will make this really the Xi Jinping show, and just how that plays out here, both with regards to the Pacific, but also the messaging sent to the broader region. I think that's going to really be one of the most telling things to come out of the APEC summit.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe made a historic visit to Darwin on Friday, some 75 years after Japan bombed the northern Australian city, as the two countries cement ties in the face of an emergent China. Trade and closer defense relations are the centerpieces of Abe's two-day visit and meetings with Prime Minister Scott Morrison before the pair traveled to Papua New Guinea for a weekend APEC summit. Abe is the first Japanese leader to visit the port city, where more than 250 people were killed during multiple bombing raids in 1942 to 1943 during World War II, the worst ever foreign attacks on the country. Abe and Morrison paid their respects at memorials to the war dead in an act reminiscent of the Japanese leader's visit to Pearl Harbor in 2016.
Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Family Fun Run, November 18, 2018, at the Ciudad de Victoria Complex, Bulacan. Choose from race categories: 1.062 kilometer, 2.5 kilometers, 5 kilometers, and 9.55 kilometers. Registration is ongoing. For more details, log on to www.eaglenews.ph/EBC Funrun or call 784-7450, local 1162. You may also visit www.facebook.com/EBC Funrun. EBC Family Fun Run. This event was made possible with our major sponsors: Regent, Life's Simple Pleasures, RY Graphics and Print, Guyamax, the natural 4-in-1 super antioxidant with guayabano mangosteen, turmeric, and vitamin C. With the participation of Isuzu, your responsible partner for life, together building people. Mr. Gary Escobar, Salampas by Hisamitsu Philippines, Skechers Performance, White Glow, Australia's #1 teeth whitening system, Beldia, your strategic procurement partner, Blue Pro Energy Plus Electrolytes. Enjoying your passion never stops. And in partnership with Maligaya Development Corporation and Philippine Red Cross.
Welcome back. British Prime Minister Theresa May battled to salvage a draft Brexit deal and her own political future. After a tumultuous Thursday in which ministers resigned and members of her own party plotted to oust her, May faced the public to defend her position in a radio phone-in. The Conservative leader said she believed with every fiber of her being in the Brexit course she had set after facing a hostile parliament and seeing 4 ministers, including Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab, quit the government. Members of parliament on all sides warned her there was no way the plan could win their approval, but she dismissed calls to quit. The Prime Minister admitted concerns about the backstop solution to the Irish border question within the deal, which Brexit supporters fear would keep Britain tied indefinitely into a customs union. Critics also believe May has conceded too much to Brussels in other key areas, while EU supporters are calling for a second referendum on a final deal. May, however, said there would be no second vote as far as she's concerned.
Well, look, I have taken a very clear view about the question of a second referendum. I've made that view clear to members of Parliament, and I think actually across the House of Commons most members of Parliament recognise that they gave a vote to the British people, and the British people voted, and it's up to us to deliver on that vote and not have a second referendum. As far as I'm concerned, there will not be a second referendum. We asked people their view. They said we should leave the European Union, and we will leave the European Union, and we will leave on the 29th of March 2019.
Now, the agreement sets out commitments over citizens' rights after Brexit, the proposed 21-month transition period, the £39 billion divorce bill, and most controversially, the backstop to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And it still needs to get the stamp of approval from MPs in Parliament and finally from the 27 other EU member states. She acknowledged some were not happy with the compromises made to secure the deal, but said it delivers what people voted for and it's in the national interest. She also vowed to see this through.
My approach throughout has been to put the national interest first, not a partisan interest, and certainly not my own political interest. I do not judge harshly those of my colleagues who seek to do the same, but who reach a different conclusion. They must do what they believe to be right, just as I do. I'm sorry that they've chosen to leave the government, and I thank them for their service. But I believe with every fibre of my being that the course I have set out is the right one for our country and all our people.
But Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn told her the government simply cannot put to Parliament this half-baked deal. Listen to this.
The government, Mr. Speaker, is in chaos. Their deal risks leaving the country in an indefinite halfway house without a real say. The government simply cannot put to Parliament this half-baked deal that both the Brexit Secretary and his predecessor have rejected.
Meanwhile, Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg, leader of the Brexit Hardline European Research Group, submitted a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister. The ERG leader handed in a letter to the party's parliamentary group in the House of Commons after a vacuous session of Parliament in which Theresa May sought to defend her draft Brexit agreement despite opposition.
We are a democracy. If you look at the deal, our tariffs will be set by the European Union, and it would be illegal for us to offer lower tariffs. This is not Brexit. This is a failure of government policy. It needs to be rejected. This is nothing to do with personal ambition. It's nothing to do with ambition of Brexiteers. It is about ambition for Brexit and the country. Leaving the European Union is the most fantastic opportunity of the United Kingdom. It means we can have the opportunity of setting lower tariffs, cheaper food, clothing and footwear, helping the least well off in our society the most. This opportunity is being thrown away.
At least 48 letters from Conservative MPs are required to trigger a vote of no confidence in the party leader. But a majority of the party's 315 lawmakers would have to vote against May in order for her to be ousted. Now, May had secured her cabinet's collective approval for the agreement during the stormy 5-hour meeting on Wednesday, and European leaders hailed the tentative deal. In Brussels, EU President Donald Tusk said member states would have until Tuesday to examine the deal and to agree the wording of a parallel political statement setting out goals for the bloc's future relations with London.
I hope that there will not be too many comments. I took good note of Prime Minister May's statement yesterday.
Meanwhile, the Dean of the Faculty of Law at University College London, Pierre Ikut, says it's clearly a difficult time for Theresa May after a series of ministers, including Brexit Minister Dominic Raab, resigned. The resignations came almost immediately after Theresa May announced her proposed EU withdrawal agreement.
We will have to sort of wait and see what that does to the Prime Minister's authority and whether she can keep her party sort of toe the line and agree with this agreement ultimately in Parliament. And then obviously there may be a vote of no confidence in her or a leadership challenge or things like that, but I don't feel I know anything more about the politics of that to say what exactly is going to happen, but it's clearly very difficult times for her. The United Kingdom could not develop its own trade policy. It would need to continue to comply with lots of EU regulations. And I think Raab had said that he felt that it should be possible for the United Kingdom to decide, if that customs union is created, to decide unilaterally when to leave it. And that's not the solution found in the agreement. It needs to be a joint decision by the UK and the European Union.
It takes back control of our borders, laws and money. It protects jobs, security and the integrity of the United Kingdom, and it delivers in ways that many said could simply not be done.
The government, Mr. Speaker, is in chaos. Their deal risked leaving the country in an indefinite halfway house without a real say. The government simply cannot put to Parliament this half-baked deal that both the Brexit Secretary and his predecessor have rejected.
And some people have said this may happen here as well, that Parliament rejects the deal now, sort of in December, and that over Christmas the pound plummets and markets panic, and that members of Parliament return and then vote for the deal in a second vote. But I'm, at this point in time, a bit sceptical about that scenario. I'm not sure. No deal would not be sustainable, and it would just have to be the next day after the 29th of March. The EU and UK would have to sit down together again and negotiate on so many things, which are just not regulated any longer, and where they wish to cooperate. And so I think we are headed for many more years of this drama, unfortunately, unless there is a second referendum and people vote to remain in the European Union.
Meanwhile, the Liberal Democratic Party holds an anti-Brexit protest on Parliament Square as backlash over Theresa May's draft deal has renewed hopes for new Brexit vote. Backers of a so-called People's Vote were buoyed after her tentative agreement with the European Union faced a furious backlash from members of her own ruling Conservatives. Take a look.
To have the final say on this deal.
Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Theresa May's deal that she's brought back from Brussels will not pass the House of Commons. The opposition, not just from my party, the Liberal Democrats and Labour and the SNP, but also from the Northern Irish and from her own backbenchers and the Conservative benches, means it can't pass.
We had a referendum 2.5 years ago, but what was promised to the people then is not what we're being offered now. We were promised an ideal policy for leaving the European Union, which I thought was impractical and unlikely to transpire. But what the government has actually negotiated is not that. It's a much poorer deal, and it's very much poorer than remaining in the European Union as a member state.
What do we want? Brexit! When do we want it now? Brexit now! I think it's better than staying in the EU, but I believe it's not what people wanted, and that's not what the 17.5 million people voted for.
Eagle News International will be right back.
Appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork tayo, parents!
Rated G, good for all. Oops, rated PG. Dapat may mga magulang para sagutin ang mga tanong ng kabataan.
Grabe, rated SPG, maselan!
Higpitan ang paggabay.
Pag rated MTRCB, rated responsable.
The number of people missing in one of California's deadliest wildfires soared to more than 600 on Thursday as the remains of 7 additional victims were found by rescuers. Authorities said the list of missing people had jumped from 300 to 631 during the day as investigators went back and reviewed emergency calls made when the so-called campfire in Northern California erupted on November 8.
The number of people who are still looking for, who are unaccounted for, has increased to 631. And this number increased by 501 people. But for tonight, it is again my very sad duty to report that we have located 7 additional human remains.
President Donald Trump is set to visit California on Saturday to meet with victims of the wildfires believed to be the worst in the state's history. Many of the victims in the hundreds missing in the Camp Fire were elderly people who lived in the Butte County town of Paradise in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It is believed they were unable to flee the fast-moving blaze or were trapped in their cars as they attempted to escape the inferno. Meanwhile, 19-year-old Jonathan Clark searches in vain for his brother and sister-in-law and their 6-year-old child, all three of whom were missing after California's deadliest ever wildfire.
I know that he was in town and in the area when this came through. And his son, they call him Maurice Jr. And we really hope he made it out. My dad, he's starting to lose hope a little bit, comparing to knowing that this isn't like Maurice to just disappear off the face of the earth and not let anybody know. But we're still trying, and we'll do whatever it takes until he's found. Dead or alive, that's just what Clarks do. We look out for each other.
The first snowstorm of the season swirled into the tri-state area in the U.S. Reporting from New Jersey, here's Rod De La Paz.
We are here in central New Jersey. This marks the first winter storm of 2018 in the northeast area of the United States. As you can tell here behind me and all over, we have a snowstorm, legitimate snowstorm here. Why don't you step down here with me a little bit? We got some accumulation. Looks like at this point maybe about a ½ an inch. It's packed snow. Not good for driving at all. So please be careful if you are in this area. And for those who are not in this area, look around. Enjoy the view because it is really breathtaking. This is Rod De La Paz, 1 with 25.
One of the first big storms of the season moved across the eastern half of the country Thursday, causing at least 7 deadly traffic clashes and closing schools as it dropped snow as far south as central Alabama. The nasty weather wasn't finished yet by the Thursday evening commute as it dropped more than an inch of snow on New York City and headed through New England. So far, 8 deaths have been attributed to the storm, including 2 people who died when a tour bus overturned in Mississippi on Wednesday. There were 3 deaths in Arkansas, 1 in Indiana, 1 in Ohio, and 1 in Maryland. Definitely not ready for this weather. Going to go hibernate today and hope for the best. Dana Periste of Medham, New Jersey, told CBS New York. The weather agency says snow, ice, and rain will lead to cause power outages and travel disruptions over a large portion of the northeastern United States into Friday.
At least 11 people were reported dead Friday as a powerful cyclone battered India's eastern coast. Take a look. Thousands of trees were felled by winds that destroyed homes and vehicles as hundreds of thousands fled to shelter homes. Cyclone Gita packed winds of up to 120 kilometers per hour as it barreled into Tamil Nadu state after hitting the coast near Nagapattinam early Friday, bringing heavy rains, according to India's weather office. Torrential rain caused waterlogging and threatened landslides. There were also widespread power outages in the region. Authorities closed schools and colleges and sent out disaster management teams to move fallen trees and electricity pylons from roads. Gaya is the second major storm to hit India's east coast in recent weeks. Cyclone Titli battered Odisha state in October, killing at least 2 people. Storms regularly hit southern India between April and December. Last year, Cyclone Oki left nearly 250 people dead in the southern states of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And we're heading for another short break. Stay with us. Eagle News International will be right back.
Here's Ben Bernaldez for our sports news.
In NBA, the Houston Rockets humbled the 2-time defending NBA champion Golden State Warriors 107-86 on Thursday in a rematch of last season's Western Conference Finals. The Rockets took full advantage of the absence of Warriors sharpshooter Stephen Curry, who missed his 4th straight game with a groin injury. They posted their 6th victory in 8 games after a 1-5 start and climbed to .5 at 7-7 in the still young season. Draymond Green returned for the Warriors after serving a 1-game suspension meted out by Golden State after his confrontation with teammate Kevin Durant. The Rockets coped with their own upheaval as shortly before the game, General Manager Daryl Morey confirmed they are parting ways with 10-time All-Star Carmelo Anthony, who had played in just 10 games since arriving as a free agent prior to the season. Whether Curry's absence or continuing tension between the teammates played a role, the Warriors endured a horrendous shooting night, connecting on 42.1% of their shots from the field and just 22.2% from three-point range. Not a single Warriors start made a three-pointer, a first since March 2013. Green, Durant, and Klay Thompson combined to shoot 0-for-9 from beyond the arc, while neither Andre Iguodala nor Damon Jones attempted a three-pointer. Durant led the Warriors with 20 points and Thompson added 10, not enough as Iguodala and Jones combined for 10, and Green came away with 0 points. James Harden led Houston with 27 points, James Ennis added 10, while Paul and Clint Capella chipped in 10 apiece. And in tennis, Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer have backed a new men's team competition just a day after the Serbian raised concerns over the timing of the event, which will take place shortly after the revamped Davis Cup. The ATP Cup, announced by the ATP and Tennis Australia on Thursday during the ATP Finals in London, will be played from 2020 across 3 Australian cities over 10 days in the lead-up to the Australian Open, the first Grand Slam of the year, which starts in January. It will offer $15 million in prize money and up to 750 ATP ranking points to the winners. And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez, and I'm 1 with 25.
An iconic swimming pool picture painted by British legend David Hockney sold for $90.3 million in New York, setting a new auction record for a living artist, according to Christie's. Take a look.
I mean, look, I hope he's happy. I hope he's not upset that we sold it for so much money. I admire him. I'm a big fan of his. I thought a lot about David Hockney in the last couple of months, so I hope he's happy and pleased. But, you know, he's an artist. He doesn't need us to tell him that he's great. He knows. It showed to me that the market is strong, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to sell $1 billion worth of art. It showed that the market is selective. There were great pieces, went for just as high prices as we've seen before, or even higher.
Portrait of an artist, pool with two figures, was snapped up after more than 9 minutes of bidding, dominated by two rival telephone bidders. The previous record was held by Jeff Koons and his balloon dog Orange, which sold for $58.4 million at Christie's in 2013. Christie's declined to reveal the identity of the seller, but Bloomberg and the ArtNet website have reported that it was owned by British billionaire Joe Lewis, who owns the Tavistock Group, London Premier League soccer team Tottenham Hotspur, and whom Forbes estimates to be worth $5 billion. The Hockney had been taken on tour to drive up potential buyer interests in Hong Kong, London, and Los Angeles. Thursday's sale at Christie's flagship post-war and contemporary evening art sale caps the end of the biannual marquee art auctions held every year in November. The single most expensive piece of art ever sold at auction was the eye-watering $450.3 million paid for Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi last year at Christie's in New York.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we're one with 25.